very much.
Well, joining us now to discuss is Florida Congressman and member of the House Judiciary Committee, Congressman Greg Steube. Thank you very much for joining us, Congressman. Let's begin first, if we're talking about Vice President Kamala Harris heading over there to talk to our allies, to deal with Poland. Listen to this, laughing off a question about Ukrainian refugees.
Okay. A friend in need is a friend indeed.
Okay, I can first. Okay, so this time.
I mean, it definitely makes you cringe, but yet we see what's happening. We're sending her over there to deal with it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you have people dying in Ukraine, and she thinks this is just some joke, and she's over there to save face. And when the reporter asked her a tough question, a very good question, about what the United States was going to do in conjunction with Poland, she clearly didn't want to answer the question, so she just started laughing and then kind of deferred to the Poland minister, the Poland president, for him to answer the question, because she doesn't have a response, because this White House doesn't have a response. And what is Patriot missiles going to do on the Polish border when Ukraine is being bombed? It will do absolutely nothing. It's just a show for the Biden administration to say, hey, well, we did this. And you saw earlier this week where this whole thing about transferring MiGs, you had one part of the administration, Secretary Blinken, saying we're going to transfer MiGs through Poland to the Ukraine for Ukrainian pilots to use in defense of their country. And then suddenly the Defense Department and the Pentagon issues a press release saying the exact opposite. And then the Biden administration, the president, going with the Department of Defense. It's like the cabinet doesn't even know what's happening in the White House right now, and they can't make decisions for themselves.
Yeah, Congressman, would you support providing some sort of air support? And if so, what would it look like? How would you go about it?
Yeah, and that's a challenging question. I don't see the difference, and I know there's difference legally in international law between javelins and Patriots and aircraft. But if we're providing them weapons, if we're providing them the ability to defend themselves, I don't see why we can't provide them the other MiGs, aircraft, whatever they need to defend themselves. I would support that. We did a survey not too long ago in my district, and it was overwhelmingly supported in my district to send them aircraft, to allow for airstrikes, to do those type of things. I mean, at what point is the Western nation, and at what point is the United States going to say, we have seen enough war crimes committed by the Russian government, we've seen enough children being targeted, maternity wards being targeted, hospitals being targeted, civilians being targeted intentionally, and now there's talk about chemical warfare, and you see that he's kind of, Putin's kind of setting that up, saying, oh, that they have chemical capabilities for them to be able to use chemical capabilities. Is it at that point that the Western NATO countries and the United States are going to finally say you can't kill civilians in Ukraine?
Yeah, but then you have the EU, as reported yesterday, sanctioning Poland. Let's talk a little bit more about that, and we can bring this up because we have a quote from the Polish president saying that it is obvious to us that in Ukraine, Russians are committing war crimes. But then, just to bring back the vice president, she stopped short of making the same accusation. Why are we stopping short of calling them war crimes? Because also at the same time, we don't necessarily want to get into war with a nuclear power, Russia and the United States.
Well, I certainly won't stop short of saying it. Targeting civilians on the battlefield is a war crime under the Geneva Conventions that all of these countries signed after World War II. You can't target civilians. You can't target hospitals. That's absolutely a war crime. So I certainly won't stop short of saying that. And then so at what point, now that he's violated that, clearly targeting civilians, intentionally doing that, at what point do we say enough is enough and allow the Ukrainian people through our weapons and our capabilities to be able to defend themselves? But you're right. That's why everybody's being so cautious. One major strategic misstep, and if we kinetically engage in that country, whether it's United States pilots flying a plane or the United States soldiers going on the ground, that's the excuse that Vladimir Putin's looking to use for a full-out World War III. And obviously nobody wants that. Nobody wants World War III. Nobody wants some type of nuclear a war between NATO countries and the United States. So that's what everybody's trying to prevent from happening. But at the same time, we need to do what we can to support the Ukrainian people, to get them the weapons and the tanks and whatever else they need to be able to defend themselves from these ruthless attacks.
We've got about 30 seconds. Given what we see right now, what do you think happens next?
I don't think the Biden administration has a plan. I mean, we just had the State of the Union a week or so ago. There was no plan laid out other than that we're going to sanction Russia, and then he was weak on that. We're weeks behind. As an American government, we are weeks behind what we should be doing diplomatically and from a sanction perspective to prevent the Russian government from, one, invading, and now that they've invaded, be very strong on all the sanctions against their government. Russian oil. We voted on a House bill yesterday to do that in the House of Representatives. That'll now go to the Senate. But we need to be stronger on the sanctions, stronger diplomatically to prevent and cut off Russia from the world and hit them economically where it hurts the worst.
Yeah. Probably should have done that before he entered
Months ago.
Ukraine.
Yeah.
The moment troops started coming up on the border of the Ukraine, this president should have been instituting sanctions on the Russian government, and he failed.
All right, Congressman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Right.